thank you for coming back to another episode of our podcast, A While Back. Today's episode, we're lucky enough to have another third generation, a millennial, my nephew, Grandpa's grandchild, Jacob. And Jacob is the man behind the scenes. He's the one that takes care of everything in our podcast. Everything from the actual filming of the podcast, editing. There's nothing about the podcast that Jacob doesn't take care of on a weekly basis. And that's why we're able to get this out every Sunday. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on and talk to Jacob today, and we're going to pick his brain over a lot of things, but primarily how to do a podcast, what it all entails, and how much time is involved. Because a lot of people just assume that it's not too big a deal. Push a button here, push a button there. But that's not the way it actually works. So we're going to get a lot of information from Jacob on this for people that might be interested in doing their own podcast. So today's episode is titled The Entrepreneur. So we're very proud of Jacob. He's done a phenomenal job, not just with the podcast, but he also has a lot of graphic design experience. And he's worked in graphic design before. He was going to school for graphic design, and he does a great job with it. So I know not just alone our logo for a while back, but he's also working on another logo that we've got going forward, and he's done a phenomenal job with all of them. So today we're going to listen to Jacob, all the details he has, and we're going to find out just how much a podcast entails. But Jacob, let's get started. So go on and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Jacob. I'm from Victoria. The whole graphic design thing kind of started with college. Mahogany, who was in the last episode, kind of told me to get into, to try out a class.
Jared's wife.
Yeah, to try to get into a class. I think it was called Digital Media at Del Mar.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I'll try it. I started looking into it, and I was like, okay, I kind of like it. And I started going to a couple of the classes, and they were pretty cool. But for some reason, I don't know why. I guess it was like the art teacher or the art professor. She was like the main person for photography, and for some reason, instead of graphic design, I kind of went toward photography more. Which I mean, it's kind of a part of graphic design too, because some of them you have photography in it too. But mainly I got into that first. I got a camera, I started editing, which is I think what I like to do more instead of the actual photography. It's more of the editing part. So then from there it kind of went to graphic design, and they just weren't teaching me fast enough, so I kind of just started teaching myself, and from there, it just kind of went to more and more stuff.
Well, good, because graphic design is, of course, something that you've been good at. I haven't seen too much of your photography, but that's outstanding as well. So which one do you feel you enjoy more? Do you enjoy graphic design more? Did you enjoy photography? Do you still do photography?
I still do photography. I would say there's two of them I like the most. It's graphic design, and then I also started doing PC builds and computer builds. I like, those two I like the most.
Right.
So mainly if graphic design, I say logos. Logos are my favorite thing.
Yes.
But I also like to do business cards also. Design different types of business cards. I also do invites, posters, flyers.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Don't worry. Vexi Media is coming up later.
Good.
All right. I know how to handle this. All right. So you said that you got interested in graphic design once you started doing photography, correct? So what made you decide, you know what, this is something I'm going to be doing as potentially a career going forward? What made you decide that, you know what, this is the way I want to go rather than photography?
Honestly, I did not know at all.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't know. I didn't even know, like, anything. The only thing is that I knew I liked editing more than actually taking photography. And when I was looking into the jobs with photography, it was kind of, there wasn't that much there, especially here in Texas. So I was like, okay, well, what else is there that I guess I could get into that if there's more jobs into?
Right.
So that's when I kind of started like into graphic design work. But then like with college, they started teaching us, because with digital media, it's like a vague thing of different fields. So I think it was like producing, it was like graphic design and like a couple other things, maybe like web design, something like that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So from there, like they started teaching us a couple of the programs, and that's kind of what I got into, and that's what I started teaching myself. So I think learning the programs is another thing that I guess got me into graphic design more, because like Photoshop, I love Photoshop. It's not my favorite, but it's one I love. I like doing. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much.
All right, good.
Pretty much it.
So we know that you're primarily responsible for everything on the podcast because you control it from start to finish, everything but the questions and actual interaction
you
between
take care of
everybody.
that.
Yeah, I take care of that. But you do everything else, and that's phenomenal. So I think that you've done a great job for us. The initial episode, our test episode, actually turned out to be our episode 1, but that had nothing to do with anything on your
I
end.
had to work a lot of magic on that one.
That was just my decision to make it the last minute to put it out there because I thought the content was really good and I wanted to make sure it got out there. But you did a great job of trying to edit what you could. I mean, that wasn't your fault at all. All right, so now you're responsible for everything on the podcast. So on the podcast, you not only film, you edit. So what I want you to do is I want you to talk about how we got started in the podcast and then what we decided to go forward with. Because we're looking at other avenues going forward. So I want you to talk about those as well. So we decided, you, myself, Grandpa, and Justin, we decided we were going to do this podcast 2 months ago. I think it was something in that range. It wasn't that long, right? And we knew what we were going to talk about. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have the third generation present nonstop, but we've kind of had to shift, pivot on the fly. So now this one is where I want you to elaborate because I want you to talk about it from step 1 through step 20. But what exactly does it entail when you actually have to do a podcast from step 1, setting up everything, step 2, having the interaction, step 3, adjusting the camera, those kind of things, including the brightness. So I want you to go through each step until the final step, which is editing.
I mean, technically, for a podcast, you don't need that much stuff.
Right.
You don't necessarily need that much stuff. We're kind of just doing it without, like professional equipment either. Like I don't even have professional equipment, but all you mainly need is like a camera, a microphone. Doesn't matter what kind of microphone. We're using a shotgun mic right now.
Right.
We don't even have lapel mics, which is more professional, or like a stand mic.
We're not professional, but go on.
I'm just using the basic lens that came with the camera, a tripod that I got from Amazon. That's really about it. Other than that, you just need people to talk about and stuff to like questions or things to talk about. That's mainly it.
Right.
From there, other than that,
so what
we have Justin behind the camera giving us times. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, he keeps track of all the important stuff like that. Absolutely. So what about from behind the camera? When you're looking through your camera, what are you looking for? What specifics are you having to adjust?
Well, I try to take care of, I guess, the lighting and color, and just so things don't get out of whack, because then it makes it a lot easier to go into the software and edit it.
Right.
Instead of, so like in Premiere, Adobe Premiere, which is the editing software I use, it makes it a lot less easier to like say like color grade it or color correct it, and then like to change the brightness, because from what I was like, I guess taught myself is that say when you're filming or taking photos, it's easier to put light into the I guess video or photo than to take it out.
To make it darker. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So that's an important one that a lot of people are going to have to understand. The sound, you've already talked about the shotgun mic because that's all that we have.
Yeah.
The camera itself is 1080. What exactly is the camera?
The camera itself that I use is a Canon EOS.
Right.
88 or yeah, I think it's 88D or 80D or something like that. It films 1080p at 60 frames a second, but we don't use 60 frames a second because that's for slow motion type of stuff.
Yeah, we're not right.
Yeah.
We're not that professional.
Well, no, I mean we don't do anything slow motion. A podcast isn't slow motion.
So with the camera itself as well, once you're filming the episode, you've got a lot of things you have to look at. Not just time, but you got to look at everything else that goes on through the lens. Once you're finished with the episode, what are the next steps after that you take? let's go into the editing part. You know, like normally what we'll do is we'll go
Yeah.
in, view it in the house, and that'll give you some ideas of what you'll have to do and things like that. So let's talk about that.
Well, first of all, I made him get another hard drive,
Yes.
a wireless hard drive to make it a lot easier.
Mhm.
So I can just pop in the SD card into that, then it automatically transfers it to him.
And it works good.
But from there, I'll usually put it on a separate hard drive, make sure I have 2 copies just to make sure that something doesn't mess up,
Right.
because I've had messes before.
We lost one episode.
Yeah, we lost one
That was the
episode
hard drive
because of it.
Right.
But I just make sure I have double, if not triple, just copies. I put them on a laptop first, and then from there I'll go to my desktop at home or wherever, and I'll transfer them over there, and then I'll upload it to Premiere, and then from Premiere I can start adding the different things in, like the intro, the Vexi Media credit stuff,
Right.
the outro, the music, all that stuff.
And when you're at home and you're having to edit stuff, how long does you just for one episode, like for ours are almost always 25 to 30-minute episodes, how long does it take to edit an episode once you sit down and start looking at it?
It kind of depends. I know. Well, in the very beginning, it's a little. I would say it takes quite a while because you have to get the intro, the outro,
Right.
all the music, all that kind of stuff ready to go. So that definitely takes a while. But once you have all that ready to go, it's kind of a little bit easier because you can drag and drop everything kind of into the video or into the video, and then it kind of just depends, because if you go through the episode, so like the episode with you and Grandma, see, him and Grandma are loud talkers, so I don't have to
believe.
So I don't have to really mess with the audio that much. He's a little more quieter, so I have to like raise the audio with him.
Right.
So it can kind of depend if like somebody's really loud, I'll have to change that. The locusts or birds behind us, I'll have to cut out as much as I can.
Right.
So it can kind of take a while. It just kind of depends. I would say 2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3 hours basically for each episode. That's about right. That makes sense. So when you're editing and you're finished with editing and you got it exactly the way you want it, what do you normally have to do then to get it uploaded to YouTube? What happens at that point?
Well, first of all, you have to make sure that the Premiere file or Premiere, I guess, project that you're working on is in the correct size. Because I guess we had a problem last time where I guess when I automatically went into Premiere, it had automatically changed it to 4K sizing instead of 1080p sizing.
Right.
And so you have to make sure that's all correct. From there, you're just gonna you just upload it back to your computer in the highest quality you pretty much can. And since it's video, it's considered a lossy file, which MP4. There's 2 types of files: the lossless file and the lossy file. Now, an MP4 file, which is what most video is, if you keep uploading or keep transferring and different stuff, it continuously loses quality, and that's considered a lossy file. If you ever seen a file name with AVI or a couple other ones, that's called a lossless file, meaning you can transfer it, you can upload it, you can do whatever you want to it, and it'll never drop quality.
And you never have to worry about quality dissipating through each one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
and
good.
since I pretty much take it off of Premiere and put it automatically to YouTube, I don't have to do the AVI stuff. But say when I film, sometimes use AVI. I know with like a software that I use on my computer to screenshot or screen record my computer. It's called OBS, and basically that I can transfer it with an AVI file, so it doesn't lose quality at all. But from there, then I just upload it to YouTube, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, good. How long does it usually take to upload an episode? Just a few minutes, 30 minutes?
Probably like 10, 20 minutes.
10 or 20 minutes, and that's it?
It depends on the Wi-Fi.
Okay, good. So the reason I'm asking those questions, because that's important to people that want to start their own podcast and that want to get it on YouTube. So you're giving them a lot of helpful information that they probably had no idea about until you started speaking about it now. So
Make sure you have good Wi-Fi.
outstanding. Yeah, you want to make sure of that too. So thank you for that. All right, Grandpa, what's your question?
Okay, what else would you like to take the content of the podcast to? And as I know, we also talked about Instagram. What are your plans with that?
Well, one thing I've wanted to do with not only the podcast but my like Vexi Media in general, I wanted to make merch, like merchandise and like clothing and hats, stuff like that with it. I've never done it before, but I've always wanted to. So I think that would be a good idea. I think that would be a cool idea.
It's funny that you say that. So I exactly. So I'm glad that you said that because I'm going to be honest with you. I think we'd even talked about this initially. Maybe it was just you and I. But when you did okay, we did too.
Yeah, we talked
So when you made that logo for a while back, and I told you how I love that logo. All right. What I wanted to do, and I still may do it, is I may go to one of those Prince Charming, one of those printing T-shirt companies, and have them put the logo on a shirt, on a pocket, put it on a cap, something like that. Because I think that those little logos like that, it's great for merchandising, like you're talking about, but it's also one of those things that, hell, everybody here, everybody that's been on the show, everybody that's helped out is proud of it. So why not go on and have merchandise of it? So that's good.
Plus, you can give it to them for free, and that's free advertising.
Yeah. Well, I'm not giving anything to anybody for free. No. Well, it's going to be awfully expensive, even for Dad. Even for Dad, it's going to cost him about $40 a shirt. Yeah, he just doesn't know it yet. So now this is one where you.
I'd rather owe you than beat you out of it.
You owe me a hell of a lot, then. All right. So let's go on and talk about Vexi Media. Because I know Vexi Media is your little darling, and
that's my pride.
I know it is, and this is where I want you to brag about it. I want you to tell us what you can do now, and then tell us about where you want to take Vexi Media in the future, because that's going to be important, and not just for, like we talked about, helping people start their own podcast, but if they have questions, people can email you, people can ask you. Like we have another podcast potentially coming down the pipeline where I have you setting up another logo. So those are the kind of things that we need people to understand that, hey, contact Jacob at Vexi Media, and he's got several logos that he can option for, that you can option through and look at, and he can help you pick the one you want. Of course, he's not free, so it's going to cost you, but the professionalism is one of those things that you may not have been able to do yourself, and he can do it for you. So let's go on now. Let's talk about Vexi Media and let's brag about Vexi Media.
All right. Well, the way that it started off was, as I was saying, I kind of just like started teaching myself everything. And I kind of decided that they weren't teaching me enough. Like they weren't teaching me fast enough. So I kind of just decided just to kind of go by myself and figure out how to just do stuff, like teach myself graphic design, all that kind of stuff. But from there, it was all just waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, teaching myself day by day as much stuff as I possibly could. Google and YouTube were a hell of a tool. Let's just say that.
I know YouTube was absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I learned how to like start my own business and everything like that. I had to go to the county clerk's office, get all the paperwork done and everything like that. And since at first I was gonna put under my name, it was gonna be because I told you I was gonna do photography.
Right.
So it's gonna be Jacob Orman Photography. That's what it was gonna be. But I made the logo and everything.
Right.
But then I was talking to my brother Jarrett, who's on the last podcast, because he knows business stuff too. And I was talking to them about just like business and how I should go about it, and they said no, to make it I guess more professional and have like a professional name and everything like that. So I kind of came up with all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Vexi Media. That name, I don't really know how I came up with that name. I know like vector, because graphic design is vector graphics. It's not raster graphics, which are photos. And basically what a vector graphic is basically you can zoom it in as far as you want.
Okay.
It won't change any quality because it's all mathematics. Whereas a raster graphic is like a photo. So if you zoom in a photo, you'll see all the pixels and stuff like that. So I kind of just like vector, Vexi, so I kind of just did like that.
Now, what exactly do you offer on Vexi Media right now as far as some of your services go? And where do you plan to take it in the future?
Right now, I have graphic design, so logos, invites, business cards,
Exactly,
posters, all
yeah.
that kind of stuff. I have photography. I think it's commercial photography, travel photography, landscape photography, portraits, engagement photography. From there, I have custom PC builds.
Right, right.
Uh, I build my own computers. I've built my own computer. Go to Vexi Media on Instagram. It's on there.
There you go. So when you say you build PCs,
Yes.
do you build them specifically for certain applications, like for instance a gamer PC, as opposed to a business-related storage type PC?
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, technically, a gaming PC isn't necessarily any different from a regular PC. They just call it that.
Faster microprocessor.
It just it has better hardware.
Right,
That's
right,
basically
right.
all it is. That's the only difference. But yeah, that's kind of how you go about it. If somebody wants a PC, the first thing I ask them is, okay, what are you using it for?
Right.
Is it going to be for gaming, or is it going to be for like a work? Or is it like a workstation? Or are you doing like Adobe stuff on it? So like my computer, it's more of a workstation. I want to work on it.
Right.
I occasionally game on it, but that's not my main focus. My focus is on workstations. So with that, I look at the that kind of hardware. So it would be like fast, like bigger, like more memory, or a bigger processor. For video, like rendering on Premiere, rendering a video, it takes up a pretty big amount of graphics. So with that, I would need a bigger graphics card than two.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of hardware.
oh, I'm sorry.
And you know what I noticed, Jacob? A lot of these small businesses, they've got businesses that's open, but they don't have a attractive logo. And most of that, if you notice that, your business really increases with a attractive logo. And so that could help you there with some of these businesses that would contact you about logos.
Yeah.
Because I know you're very good at making different logos.
Yeah,
We
with
design the business.
Yeah, with a lot of logos. Yeah, from what I've seen out there, it's like they don't have that great of logos, and like in my mind, it's like, dude, I could make it so much better, and like so much, I could take it to another level.
Exactly. So that's why I had told you a while back too that I have people that are already interested in doing their own podcast.
Yeah.
People that are interested in getting logos, and that's why I wanted you to start getting your name out there. And now that you're talking about it, a lot more people are going to understand what Vexi Media is, what it entails. What I want you to talk about now is where do you want to go with Vexi Media? What is your 5 to 10 year plan for Vexi Media? Tell us about your future and what you're going to do to achieve it.
Well, there's one more thing I want to add to it. Well, actually, there's a couple more things I want to add to it. Like, I want to add in like animations. So like,
Okay.
You know
Yeah.
how I did the intro and the
Yes.
outro? Yeah. So that's like you use Adobe After Effects. So I started teaching myself that maybe a couple months ago, and I want to add that into it and start doing animations. So like intros, outros, stuff like that for YouTubers and stuff like that. Another thing that I just recently got was a class for it's called a UX UI design, and I want to add that into the business also.
So what does that entail? What does that mean?
It's user interface design.
Oh, user interface. Okay.
So it'd be like how, let's say, Windows looks.
Right.
Yeah, somebody had to design that, so that's what it's about.
Okay, good. All right, outstanding. So your 5 to 10 year plan is you're going to continue to expand. You're going to continue to offer other services.
Yep.
All right, good. So I know that as far as everything goes for Vexi Media, everything seems to be going really well. I think that your company is going to be big. I really do. I think it's one of those things that before long, people are going to say that, you know what, and I've got a ton of people that have already told me that they would love to do what we are doing. They'd love to have a podcast. They'd love to have something where they're talking to their parents, they're finding out how their grandparents live, all those kind of things. Because once you get to be my age, not your age just yet, but once you get to be my age, you want to hear those stories. You want to hear how things happen. And that's what a podcast does, is it helps everybody benefit from it. So I've got at least 4 people that I've talked to that want to do the exact same thing. And those are just the people that have contacted me about getting in touch and talking about it with you especially. So now that you've got your name out there, now that people can put a face with Vexi Media and your extreme knowledge of this stuff, I think that if anybody is absolutely positively remotely interested in doing your own podcast, doesn't matter the theme. I'm sure Jacob, as long as it's not skydiving, maybe, but I don't think he'll jump out of a plane. But as long as it's a theme that he feels,
I kind of wanted to, but
as long as it's a theme he feels comfortable with, I'm more than certain he'll go on and he'll give you all the specifics. He'll talk about what it's going to entail to do it. And then, of course, he'll talk about whatever the price is and maybe regarding getting yourself set up and getting you in a routine and going through all the operational procedures with you.
everything's on the website. VexiMedia.square.site.
There you go. Perfect. All right. So we got to make sure you make that louder when you get on there, too. Okay?
I put it on the description every time.
Okay,
so
good,
it's on
good,
there.
good. So we need to make sure. Look at the description in case you have any questions or need to email Jacob about anything. So then, is there anything that you wanted to tell Jacob in particular about the episodes? And
No, just keep up
podcast?
the good work. I think you're doing real good, Jacob.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to learn about like how different it is like nowadays.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what was one of your favorite stories from Grandpa or Grandma or anything that you've heard?
Honestly, I would say the majority of the stuff that they talked about, I didn't even
I
know.
had no idea.
really?
I no, I
Yeah,
didn't
absolutely.
Even know at all.
That's true.
Absolutely. That's why it's important to get this kind of information out there.
Yeah.
So, but Grandpa's lived one heck of a life. Grandma's lived one heck of a life.
Dude, I don't know
She
how
has.
you're still alive.
Yes,
That's crazy.
exactly. That's why we have the one episode in there to go over those
Thank
kind
God
of
you
things.
still are.
So the important thing is that people are going to be getting in touch with you. People are going to want to know how to do this.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're giving them all your vast amount of knowledge regarding not just the podcast, building a PC, invitations like you had talked about, going into merchandising, whatever else you want to do. Just make sure that you're out there and you're getting everybody as much information as possible. Anything else you want to say in particular about Vexi Media, podcast, anything?
Call me.
Email.
Yeah, email's better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's VexiMedia@gmail.com.
There you go. So the last thing I wanted to point out is that unfortunately we were not able to have my nephew Justin right next to Jacob talking about all the stuff that he does as well to keep the podcast running smooth from an operational standpoint. But hopefully we can get Justin in another episode somewhere down the line. But they're both very, very important in this podcast. Extremely important to the way the podcast runs, whether it's smooth or not, and in how the podcast looks when you see it on your phone or on your TV. So Jacob, Justin, thank both of you for doing an outstanding job. We greatly appreciate it. Grandpa and I can just sit and talk nonstop. But when it's on camera and it's done right, that makes it all the more impressive because of what both of you two have done on y'all's end. So
Yeah,
thank y'all for
I'm
that.
not used to this. I'm not used to being in front of the
I know
camera.
you're
I
not.
like all the behind the
Yeah, I
scenes.
know, I know.
That's
But you did a
where
great job.
That's where I flourish.
Yeah,
But you did a
You
great
did a
job,
good
so
job.
thank you for that.
No problem.
All right, Grandpa, what else would you like to say?
Let me tell you something else.